literally this like $2,000 compressor that I bought, and then the direct out Prodigy to A to D it to Maddie and all this routing and all
Mhm.
this crap. I'm just like, it doesn't matter. Like, this A and B is not, oh my God, the sun came out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so for me, I think that's my number one thing. It's just like, peel it back.
It's Vanguard Conversations again, episode I don't know because I don't count that high because I got a music degree. And this is
Same.
Chris, whose last name is almost as unpronounceable as mine. Help
Yeah.
me out here, Chris.
Diener. Yeah.
Diener. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Yeah. Not a lot of letters, but that I really throws you off.
It was very entertaining as a kid getting telemarketer calls in the 90s because we heard almost every variation.
Same thing with
Yeah.
my name. So
Yeah.
I hear you, brother. But
Yeah.
so Chris, besides being a prolific Beatles and Star Trek fan, as you can see behind him, and a proud owner of a V44S Gen 2, is also the front of house engineer for Kelsea Ballerini
Hmm.
and a number of other things because it's music and this is the year 2024. So to survive, we do lots of things in the music
Yes,
industry.
that's
So
right.
I guess my first question for you is you got into live sound. So
Hmm.
why do you hate yourself?
I am the opposite of that, if I'm being honest. I understand your question. I think it's very easy to get to that place, if I'm being honest. But I am truly one of those people that leaves the house to get on a bus or a plane or whatever, and I'm like, I love this. I love doing this job. I love the people we have. I love the shows. I love the challenge. I love all the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was honestly a little difficult for my wife to wrap her head around that at first. And she was, like, I don't know, you just really love this. I'm like, yeah, I really do. But I got into it because I went to a Belmont here in Nashville, and
Mm-hmm.
I was going to go there and be a studio guy. And very quickly I realized that, around that time it was like big studios were closing and productions were
Yeah.
moving in-house, and producers were building places in their own homes. And I just kind of saw it as a dying entity.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's dying, but it was just changing so rapidly, and I saw that as just an avenue that I just wasn't as excited about anymore. And as I'm seeing this happen, there was a on-campus job opening for a performance venue at Belmont, and it was like they did all the school music recitals and they did commercial music stuff and whatever. And I thought, well, that could be really fun. I've done live sound before, but that could be really cool. And as soon as I got in there, I just immediately gravitated toward it. It was so much fun. It was super high pressure, which I really enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
shockingly. Maybe I do hate myself. Maybe that's what it is. No.
Well,
Oh,
it's funny.
God.
Everybody I know who's been in live sound long enough generally has a giant chip on their shoulder. And you and a couple other guys I know just have like some gene that makes you perfect for touring and live
It's not
audio.
it's
What?
not all the time. I mean, it comes and goes, to be completely honest, but I think the 1,000-foot view here is like I get to go out and push buttons with my friends in
Mhm.
front of, thousands of people and have a great time doing it. Like, it is truly laughable how much screwing around we do every single day and still manage to put on really great shows and have
Mhm.
fun and everyone's happy. So like I'm not poking that karmic bear at all. I'm just being as grateful as humanly possible for it, for sure.
I I'm kind of wondering what are some of the this takes a little bit of introspection, but what are some of the qualities that you have besides like you talked about being okay with the high
Mhm.
pressure and stuff that makes you enjoy it in the way that a lot like I know a lot of touring musicians too that end up quitting because they're just like it's so much travel and I'm never home and I have a family and yada yada. So what
Yeah.
is it about you do you think that kind of gives you that it brings I'm not trying to yuck your yum. If you enjoy live
No.
sound, somebody's got to do it. It's just I don't want
No,
it to
no.
be.
No,
Yeah.
I get it. And my best friend, he records video game soundtracks and string sections and whatever. And every day we have this conversation. He goes, "If I had to do your job, I would quit audio forever."
Mhm.
And I said, "Yeah, and if I was sitting in a room in front of a Pro Tools machine with, 100 orchestra people in there trying to run Pro Tools and cues and playlist, I would absolutely quit audio too." But I think it's the high pressure thing I think is great. Truthfully, I think it's ownership. I was brought in to kind of start that camp again. And we got to hire everybody that we wanted. We got to hire a bunch of really great people. Not only am I front of house, but I'm also production manager on the tour. So like this is kind of our thing that we've curated. And so
Mhm.
it's really just kind of like a baby that we've raised together with, myself and the tour manager and our designer. And, we've just kind of let it go into the world, and we've watched it grow up. And like, to me, it's it's an experience that you have with the band and the artist and the people that
Mhm.
never happens again. Like, you can record it, and you can go back and you can remix it and you can critique and like, oh, I should have hit that delay throw or whatever, all day long. But at the end of the day, it's a thing that organically happens in the world, and then it's gone, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's so cool. And
Yeah.
some of them are great and some of them are terrible, but I mean, that again, that's part of the great dichotomy of the universe. Like, there cannot be any great good without any great, sadness or whatever. So like,
Mhm.
it's just an ebb and flow. And I think you just have to realize, you're there to make these people have an experience that maybe they'll only get to do that once a year, because
Mhm.
concerts are expensive. And
Yeah.
this could be their favorite artist with their favorite song. And this one little, guitar line could change their entire year. And I mean, I'm sure that's like true for two people ever in concerts, but you know what I mean? Like, if
Yeah.
you think of it that
Yeah.
way, as like, I'm going to shoot for 1,000 every single day because these people deserve it, then it just makes it easier. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? If you go out there and you don't like it, or you don't like the band, or you don't like the music, like, yeah, it's got to be tough.
Yeah.
It's that's got to not be fun. But we're in a really unique situation to where, we've got a really great thing going, and a bunch of really great people who really care about it, take it really seriously.
Mhm.
Do a lot of screwing around for sure, but at the same time, like, they all really care about it. So that makes it great.
Yeah. I'm curious because I think most of us in the studio side of things know like the audio skills you need to have to work in live sound. But
Mhm.
what are some of the non-audio things that you found out? Oh, these are like super important, and maybe a lot of studio guys don't have this.
This might not necessarily be a thing that studio guys don't have this per se, but you just got to know how to talk to people. You got
Mhm.
to know how to make people feel important and be on your side, whether that's a union crew chief or a steward, or
Mhm.
whether that's a truck
Mhm.
driver, or whether that's a venue person, or I mean, whether that's a fan that's not having a good time because of whatever reason. Like, you got to know how to talk to people. You know how to get to them. You need to be able to understand, critically listen, and get to a point where you can reach a resolution. I mean, problem solving is just that.
Mhm.
The immediacy of the live sound thing, I think, is the main delineator between the studio world. Is like, I got to get this up. I got to get it line checked. I got to get two more bands sound checked or line checked or whatever, and then we've got doors at 6:30. Right?
Mhm.
Like, you at the studio, like, if something goes terribly wrong, like, yeah, you burn a day, but you can also send people home and maybe come back and do it again. Right?
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
is like, you're telling 17,000 people, like, oh, I'm sorry, and then that's hundreds of thousands of dollars to make that up or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you gotta deliver every day. You just have to. And we always say, like, some days it's not going to be perfect, but some days it's going to be the best it can be, and that's the best we're going to do, and that's
Mhm.
okay. You know what I mean? You can't sweat about it. Like,
Yeah.
if you cannot hit 100, you can hit 70, and everybody's cool with 70, then that's unfortunately what we got to do. We're going to do it.
Yeah. Also,
So,
these are all Nashville musicians, so their 70 is like my 510, you know?
oh, it's outrageous. It's outrageous to me.
Yeah.
And like, I have a really funny video that they would kill me if I ever shared with you, but I'll
Okay, so
send it
we're
to you.
putting it in this YouTube video is what
Yeah,
you're saying. Cool.
100%. And it's them. We had to run some like TV song or whatever, and I was pressuring them into it. I said, I got to get a good recording of this because I have to send it to so and so, and they said, okay, yeah, we'll do it. And this is like end of the day on day 5 of rehearsal, so everybody wants to go home. So they're just screwing around, and they're playing the worst guitar solos they know how. It is the funniest video I've ever heard. I will send it to you, but man, it's just wild. And they're all dying laughing. I'm in the booth dying laughing, and like, I just happened to put my phone in the corner just because I'm like, this will be good. And it was just solid gold. I couldn't even believe it. So funny.
Nashville musicians, man, are another breed. I had a buddy move out there who was one of the better guitarists that I knew in LA. And he's like,
Hmm.
dude, I'm in like the bottom 25% here. Like I
Yeah.
have to woodshed all the time, you
I
know?
came here to be a drummer and immediately was like, nope.
Yeah, that's how I
Nope.
was when I went to music
Mm-mm.
school. I brought my bass in and I was like, well, everybody's better at this
Nope.
than me. I
Yeah.
tried woodshedding for a week and I was like, this is dumb. I hate this.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
and truthfully, you got to find your niche, and that's great.
Mhm.
And but I mean, there's so many just phenomenal players, and there's so many Like I used to go down to 12 South when I was at Belmont, and we'd see, Kenny Vaughn play with his little trio of the Marty Stewart band, and it was just like you're just in a corner of a restaurant just ripping,
Hmm.
guys plugging an SG
Casually.
straight into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's insane to me. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's a great place, and all of our guys are so nice. In addition to being so talented, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's really a fun experience for sure.
So I always like to ask people this because I think humility is such an important part of being in audio.
Hmm.
Tell me about one like absolute disaster of a mistake that you accidentally made, how that
Oh,
like changed, the way you think about things. Maybe, I'd love to hear a good story of like, this is how I goofed. Cause we tell these all the time.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm a giant moron a lot of the time when it comes to if I'm just moving really fast and I'm like if there's a task at hand that is very mundane and should be very simple that I just don't sometimes connect with and I'm trying
Mhm,
to do something else or whatever, that's when I really beef it real hard.
mhm,
So for example, let me see if I can, oh, it's over there. So I have this heritage successor piece, right? And I was using it on Kelsey's vocal as a outboard compressor, and it's really great. It's I bought it to be like a drum bus compressor, and then I kind of didn't love it there, and then I tried it on the master bus. I kind of didn't love it there, and so I was like,
mhm,
well, I mean, it's a slower Neve type compression situation. I'm going to try it on Kelsey's vocal, and I did, and it was like it really worked out great. And so I was like, okay, cool, I'm good with this. And we were in music rehearsals or something, and it was like a super low pressure situation, and I had a uh Empirical Labs Mikey, and I was like, I've never tried that compressor on her. Let's just check it out, right?
mhm.
Let's see what happens. So I unpatched the Heritage. When I thought I unpatched the Heritage, and I pulled the output to go into the Mikey, and the cable won't go in. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? And so I'm like jamming it, and I'm like trying to talk to my SE, and like, just like this cable. And I'm like, so I finally get my flashlight out and I look, and I'm like, oh, there's no bent pins or anything. And so I'm still trying to jam this thing into the Mikey. And then I turn the other side around, and it's the 5-pin power supply for the Heritage. And I'm just like, God damn it. Like, and so I'm just like ripping voltage into the output of this, and I'm like, and so now I'm like, cool, I don't know if either of these units work. That's
Mhm,
terrific. And so then I've, of course, bent the ring of the Heritage power supply. So that's unusable. And I can't even test that thing again. And I'm just like, I need to slow down. Like that's
mhm.
my takeaway is like, I just need to slow down,
Yeah.
like too fast, too fast. Let's shift it back one. But I mean, I have things like that happen quite often. Logistically, it's a little less common for me just because I spend so much time in advance work. That's one of my strong suits is just like I spend time before we get to a show on
Mhm.
every facet. And if something is weird, I usually know about it pretty quick. But yeah, in the audio world specifically, I have a lot of those like, why am I not getting it? Oh, it's because I've tried to plug in a power supply to an output.
Oh, I can, you and I could do an entire hour where we just swap stories like this, like me
Yes,
taking apart a mic and trying to figure out what the heck is wrong with it when I'm building one, only to find out that I had never plugged the IEC into the wall, but I plugged it into the power supply. So of course
first
I
try.
wasn't getting any power. And if I just looked at the light on the back of the thing, it would have been pretty apparent.
It's too easy though. I mean, you can't
Yeah.
can't expect it to have all the answers for you.
No, I always tell my mic techs, Curtis and Cade, that do a lot of the building of the Vanguard mics. The one that you have was almost certainly built by one of them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, just follow the KISS rule. Whenever you run into a problem, go, okay, what's the dumbest, simplest thing it could be?
Yes.
Let's check that first. And
Correct. Yeah.
sometimes it's like, yeah, you didn't plug in the preamp, or
Yeah.
you've got the channel muted or whatever, and you're
Hmm.
trying to figure out what's wrong with the mic, and there's nothing wrong with the mic.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
most computer problems are caused by a loose nut between the chair and the keyboard, right?
Yes.
And
And most live sound problems are caused by $10 Amazon cables. Truthfully, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like an A to B USB that's just like, oh, I just need to push it a little more in.
Mhm.
There we go. We're good.
Yeah.
That's
So
wild to me.
on that note, you talked about cheap cables. What's one thing, like one piece of gear that people would never think that that's an indispensable thing that you find indispensable while you're on tour?
Indispensable on tour. Um, Gear wise, I think truthfully, it's this is kind of a newer thing that we've seen. Rat Sound did this with the Sound Tools products, but it's these 4 XLR lines over a Cat 6E cable.
Okay.
So it's like a Cat 6, whatever. honestly, like we do a lot of audience mics. And the reason
Mhm.
we do a lot of audience mics is when I don't, Kelsey comes to me the very next day and she's like, "Hey, I want to take this thing we did last night and I want to mix it. I want to put it on a record. It needs to be done tomorrow. Can you do it today?"
And
And
it
I'm
just
like,
sounds dead.
and it just sounds terrible, right? Because
Yeah.
you're in an arena or an amphitheater or whatever, and like you've got what, two small diaphragm condensers on each side of the stage
Mhm.
under the PA in behind the subs. Like, no. So I do like 2 pairs on stage. I do 4 across the thrust. I do 4 at front of house, and like we have a couple floaters just in
Oh,
case.
wow. Okay.
Yeah, and so like to get 4 mics out onto the thrust instead of running 4 XLRs, we just do one of these cat boxes. And then
Mhm.
there's a receiver and then you plug into that and whatever. So those things have been really, really indispensable. But honestly, on the this is going to sound so stupid and so meta, and I apologize in advance, but like I think the number one thing that I am learning over the last 2 years is to simplify. Period.
Mhm.
Like I
You just
spent
told us
more.
about 10 audience mics, and you're telling me now it's simplification.
Yeah, yeah, it's exactly right. But I'm talking about like in my process, in my day
Uh-huh.
to day, in my processing of things, in my mix chain or whatever. Like I spent 2 whole days in this music rehearsal period we had last month, and I just started taking things away, whether that's Waves plugins, outboard gear,
Mhm.
things like just because it's things on things on things. Because you've got you in a studio world, it's totally different because like you're making something sound the way that you want and the way that you're hearing it, barring translation problems with
Mhm.
headphones or other people's speakers. That's it. In live sound, like what you hear at the end is the finished product, right?
Mhm.
Like there is no like, oh, I'm going to listen to this later on my phone. I mean, people record it, but so like you're always trying to get to the end, right? Which is wild. But the more I take away, the happier I am every single time. It's insane to me. Like I had a whole rack of outboard gear, I had tons of wave stuff, and I was just like, I'm just going to start seeing what everything sounds like on its own. And the more I took away, I like I'm using the console compressor for snare,
Mhm.
right? And it's a Digico, and it's a great console. Don't get me wrong. Not really known for their compressors, if I'm being honest, but they just have a way. And like if I just leaned into that, I was just like, wow, literally this like $2,000 compressor that I bought, and then the direct out Prodigy to A to D it to Maddie and all this routing and all
Mhm.
this crap. I'm just like, it doesn't matter. Like, this A and B is not, oh my God, the sun came out. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so for me, I think that's my number one thing. It's just like peel it back. Do as much as you can with the source, and then sprinkle into taste, but don't go full ham because you can. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, totally. I mean, and I think studio guys need to learn that lesson too sometimes. We get way into stuff sometimes, of almost like it's not a fix it in the mix mentality, but it's like I can play with it in the mix until
Yeah.
I'm just a walking skeleton
Yeah.
mentality, you know?
Yeah.
But getting it right at the source is like one of the better things I learned from my audio engineering degree is like, hey,
Yeah.
why are you going to spend an hour in the mix when you could spend 5 minutes tweaking mic position or mic placement or
Yeah.
or mic choice or whatever and get it right in
Yeah.
the box, you know?
And if you walk away at the end of the night with a rough mix just off the console or whatever, and it's magic,
Hmm.
it's going to be magic when you get home and you pull that back up, right?
Yes.
If it's not magic and you're like, oh, I got to do X, Y, and Z, it's like, yeah, that should be something you really should have grabbed. You should have focused on there. And I mean, for us, I mean, that's just mic placement. That's like kind of as good as we get in live
Hmm.
world, right? Like, because
Hmm.
performances are performances. You can't go back and like, oh, let's do it. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
But like, you just got to do the best you can, and things change, and it's full combat audio. Truthfully, it's really what it is. So like, you just got to get it. You just got to get to the people. Like, I had a professor at Belmont, and this is words to live by in my mind. I've never forgotten it. He literally sat me down, and he was a very stoic guy, still is, and he goes, "I want you to know, nobody gives a shit what the kick drum sounds like. People just want to go and hear their favorite songs and hear the words."
Hmm.
And then and I was just like, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right."
Hmm.
You know?
And it's about I think you lose the forest through the trees sometimes, even with audio
100%.
mixes. I remember now I can't remember the Adele song, but I remember hearing it and like her voice is like way out in front, and it honestly sounds like they put a low pass filter down to like 5K on the
Mm,
rest of the band
yeah.
because this song is about Adele, you
Yes.
know.
Yep.
And
Yeah, and I mean,
like if you played back the the mix without vocals, people would be like, "This is a terrible mix. What did you record
correct.
this on?"
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and but the song's awesome because
Yep.
they
You're
knew what
creating the
to say up
space.
front. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have a lot of weird issues because like Kelsey's on a thrust all the time. Like she's on a 40-foot thrust on this tour. So she's just out in front of the PA all the time, right?
Mhm.
And so you gotta make sacrifices and you have to have, we've got an X feedback situation. We've got a Cedar DNS8, which is great. And so like we do have to compromise that from time to time when she does go out and she's standing in front of a giant D&B system pointing the mic at the speaker. You're just like you can win as much as you can in that
Yeah.
situation, but you can win no more.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just about creating that space, right? And like
Mhm.
that's another thing I've been kind of doing recently. In place of doing a bunch of drastic EQing or whatever, I'll just do like a dynamic band on our band bus. So like all the bands come to a band group and I have I think it's an F6 in there. And there's just kind of a really wide bell and it's keyed. The sidechain input is Kelsey's voice. So every time she talks or speaks, it dips in that vocal range just
Oh,
over the
wow.
band
Okay.
bus.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's like track spacer, but like in a zero latency format for
Mhm.
waves. And that really works a lot of the time too. And again, when you listen to it back, you're just like, oh, this is weird, right? And it's
Mhm.
like listening to a bass channel that you're sidechaining off the kick or something. You're just like, oh, this sounds awful on its own. But again, about the forest, not the tree. When you put it all
Mhm.
together, it's like, oh yeah, this totally makes sense.
I really like that trick with side chaining it because
Yeah.
whenever I would mix, one of the things I would do is I'd take everything else and run it to a separate bus and
Hmm.
dip like 3.5K a little bit and then bump
Hmm.
the vocal 3.5K because that's where like the intelligibility is of
Yeah.
our speech, right? So it was like, okay, you can hear the lyrics
Yeah.
without like sacrificing. It's not faders, but keying
Correct.
it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and it creates movement too, which is nice because like when
Mhm.
she gets into it, it syncs, and when she's not doing anything, the band is all there, and it's like
Mhm.
those two things you never hear independently. You only hear them happen at the same and opposite times,
Yeah.
right? So it's a little bit of that sort of stuff. But I mean, again, you're putting speakers in a giant room that wasn't built for music,
Yeah.
and you're putting a bunch of people in there, and it's just like you got to do the best you can, period. And
Mhm.
that's as far as you can get.
What's the most miserable venue you've been in acoustically where you're like, "Oh, there's just so many problems I have to iron out."
There are a couple. I'm not gonna name any names, and I
Okay, fair
certainly wouldn't
enough.
tell
Yeah.
you. I wouldn't tell you about a arena in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, at all. But there's I've been in there probably 6 or 7 times in my career, and every single time I'm like, I'm gonna beat this play. I got it, I got it this time. And then you
Mhm.
go in, and you're just like, nope, no. I mean, it's just not going to happen. I mean,
Mhm.
it's a rodeo arena, and everything is sheet metal and corrugated, and it's like it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you do there. It doesn't matter, and
Mhm.
it's just there's places like that. There certainly are like clubs that come to mind and stuff like that, but
Mhm.
I think people are kind of spending more time thinking about that and talking about that, and a lot of these older places are getting renoed, which is cool.
Mhm.
And a lot of people are really spending time on like, how do we make this better? Because like ultimately they don't want the fans to be pissed and leave, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And truthfully, like PA technology and deployment technology has come such a long way. Like we're on this DNB SL series, which is a cardioid box. That's
Mhm.
crazy, right? Like a cardioid live sound system. So you
Yeah,
stand on stage, you don't even hear it. You hear the room going bananas because it's all excited and there's,
yeah.
100 dB being pumped into it, but you don't hear it off the back. And it's just like, it just creates a different experience. So like
That's
that stuff's
amazing.
getting a lot,
Yeah.
yeah, that stuff's getting a lot better too now. And there's a couple different manufacturers doing stuff like that, but it's always improving. It's always, DSP is always changing, and it's just like, it's truly amazing the tools that we have now. But I think it still always comes back to like you said, like you know, let's get it right at the source. Like,
Mhm.
when you listen to all these old great records, like some of these consoles didn't even have high pass filters or
Yeah.
EQ or and it's just
Mhm.
like it was still magic because the performance was magic. And
Yeah.
like that's the real thing is to get good performance. And like if you can put your people in a position to give you a great performance, then you get, it's a symbiosis.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I'm curious what you think because do you still do studio work on occasion, or are you like
I do a lot of stuff for Kelsey in the like broadcast. Like if we do an event and I'll
Mhm.
like bring it and sweeten it and bring it and clean it up and remix. I do a lot of that stuff. I do a couple like releases for her from time to time here and there. But I mean, I do some things. I do some sync work and stuff like that. But truthfully, like I'm so busy with this gig, I just really don't have
Okay.
a ton of time between Kelsey and my 2-year-old.
Yeah, that's a
It's a
lot.
very full plate. Yeah,
That's a
for
lot.
sure. Yeah.
Veering kind of into the life part of it for a second, like I know a lot of people that once they had kids and got married and all that jazz, they stopped doing the touring thing because it was
Hmm.
so hard on their family life.
Hmm.
How do you kind of balance that? How do you talk to your wife and be like, yeah, hey, we're gonna get married. Oh, and by the way, I'm not gonna be around for like 200 days a year, maybe on like a big tour. How do you
Yeah.
kind of navigate that from a relationship perspective?
Well, it's interesting that you say that because it's a double-edged sword, if I can be honest. So like I met my wife while I was doing this,
Hmm.
and she gets it, and we went kind of through a period of like, I feel like your work is more important than our relationship. And
Hmm.
I had to go through the like, it's not more important, it's just more immediate. Like I have to answer this call, I have to send this
Hmm.
email back. And I think after just a period of time, she saw what it actually was, what it actually means, like the work that goes into it before you see a show. Like, because the
Hmm.
show is 1% of the
Yeah,
effort
it's
that
the
goes
tip of the
into it.
iceberg. Yeah,
That's correct. Yeah. And so, we've been married almost 10 years, and we're kind of at the point now where she's like, I get it. I totally get it.
gotcha.
Which I can't personally, if I'm being honest, I can't tell if that's better or infinitely worse,
Yeah,
existentially for all of us. Like, oh,
yeah.
she just doesn't care, but we just make the best of it. And she knows that I love it. She knows that I'm really good at it. She feels the same way. And I think our son is young enough to where he kind of doesn't get it yet.
Hmm.
And when he kind of does start getting that, I think that'll be a big problem for me. As soon as the daddy don't go stuff starts, I'm just gonna
Yeah,
be like, oh, cool. But at the same time, FaceTime is magical, and
yeah.
like I get to see him every day. I get to see him when he wakes up. I get to see him at lunch. I get to see him, whatever. When he goes to school, I get to see, his progress throughout the day. And so, like, I think the olden days of like, oh, I'm gonna get my calling card and call home once a week are clearly long gone, right? So
Hmm.
like it's a different world, and it takes the edge off. It's still very, very difficult. I'm not going to lie, but
Hmm.
it's a lot better than it can be, I guess is what I'm saying.
Gotcha. Do you have
Yeah.
any things that you have figured out that kind of help you navigate it? You talked about FaceTime
Yeah, I
from
have FaceTime. Just building time into your day to like I'm gonna call you at this time. I'm gonna not call you at this time.
Mhm.
You know that, and like we use a online database scheduling thing called Master Tour, and my wife is on Master Tour, and so she can just pull up the phone and be like, oh yeah, they're sound checking, or oh they're in the air, or whatever.
Mhm.
And so like she can understand kind of where I am with that, and it just is, communication is key. If as long as you're transparent about what's going on and when and whatever, like you can make it work. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, he's still a toddler and on his own, completely on his own time. So, we're just following along at this
Yeah.
point. But
Yeah. I mean, at that point, it's about containing the chaos, right? Because now
that's
he can
exactly right.
walk and the enemy is mobile, and that's a whole new
That's
phase of
correct. Yeah,
development.
it is
Yeah.
guerrilla warfare at its finest right now. Yeah, he's opening. I always akin him to a velociraptor from Jurassic Park because he's like opening doors, and you'll just be somewhere and you'll see the door handle start to move, and you're like, oh, what is going on?
Yeah.
But he's such a sweet kid, and he's so funny, and he's just like he's always happy and excited. So it's
Mhm.
we got very lucky. I know it's a lottery when you have a kid, and it's just like
Yeah.
we got super lucky. So yeah, I mean, it's one day at a time, if I'm being honest. We have a big run coming up in January, so I'm sure I'm going to try to make it home as much as I can in between,
Mhm.
the shows and the schedule allowing it. But it's difficult. It's not impossible. It's just you have to know what you're getting into. You have to know what to sacrifice, and you have to know what's important, if I'm
Yeah.
being honest. Yeah.
That totally makes sense. I mean, like,
Yeah.
it's just music is you work 3 times as hard for half the money sometimes, especially when you are starting out, and I know a lot of
Hmm.
people that relationships have crumbled because of that or gone through
Sure.
rocky times, and it's like, I think it's a question that not enough people ask themselves,
Yeah.
you know?
And it's a question people don't ask themselves until it's too late.
Yes.
Yeah. Until
Yeah.
it's
Now
like
being
it's
proactive
right
about that
here.
one's super important. I
Yes.
remember one
I
of my
mean, it's
professors telling us about that and like, "Hey, if you get married and you're a live musician, this is what," he
yeah.
had to go do a gig. He got called for a gig on his son's birthday. They were like
Yeah.
setting up the moon bounce and everything. He's like, honey, I gotta go, you
Yeah.
know? And
Yeah.
and he said, that's gonna happen to you. Not
Yes.
necessarily that exact thing, but it's gonna happen to you. And you
Correct.
need to be prepared for that. And
Yes.
your spouse or SO needs to be prepared for that, you know?
Correct. Yeah. And it needs to be understood that it is not more important.
Hmm.
That's not it.
Yeah.
It's just it's more immediate sometimes. It's not more immediate all the time, but we it's such a wild west industry, if I'm being honest, because like
Hmm.
comparatively to like any other job anywhere, there's very little benefits. There's not paid time off. There's not
Hmm.
parental leave. There isn't, there's just like it's just kind of, you know, it's very behind the times in that regard. So it's difficult to manage. And I think if you allow yourself to be caught up in that and always sucked in, and you're always checking your phone because you never want to miss anything, and you might miss a gig, and you might be somebody's first call, but then so they might call someone else because you didn't answer. It's like that's not a quality of life. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? You have to make a choice. Like, is that important to you, and is it not? And go from there. But I don't know. Being a little more relaxed about it has been my move. I think.
I think that's
It's
good.
yeah.
I think that is really good. And like you're not proving yourself at this point anymore. I think like you're part of the crew and part of an essential part of it, and that helps a lot too, I imagine.
It does help a lot. And, Kelsey's been great to us. I mean, she was great to us. She's been great to us for many, many years. And it's important to her for us to be happy, which is huge. And
Hmm.
that is not lost on me that does not exist everywhere. And
Yeah.
so, again, like we're all maintaining a very grateful, worldview on this because we've all been in other camps and it's not fun all the time.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Live sound, if you're on the wrong tour, not just live
yes,
sound, but like touring, if you're on the
yes,
wrong tour, it can be
yes.
tough sledding
Yeah.
for sure.
Toxic. Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I say that, but like so can studio gigs too. If you,
Oh, 100%. And it's just the people you keep, right? Like it's just
yeah.
whoever you surround yourself with. If they're not bringing you up and supporting you and, encouraging you and joking around and making you laugh and, if whoever your supervisor or superior is not actively concerned with making your day better and seeing you advance and be brought up,
Hmm.
then you're in the wrong place, if I'm being honest. Like
Yeah.
it's amazing. It shouldn't be harder than that. And yet in so many places it's so much harder than that. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're 100% correct.
Yeah.
Let's take a hard turn because we're at about 40 minutes here.
Okay.
So you use the mic that you're talking into right now, our stereo mic,
Yes.
Vanguard
Yeah,
V44S, the Gen
I
2,
do. Yep.
on drum overheads, correct?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we were kind of shocked when we started getting a lot of calls from people like you about using it on tour.
Yep.
You don't typically see mics that were designed for the studio on tour.
That's correct. Yeah.
So what is it about that mic that helps you simplify things? What is it about it that makes it, survive touring, quite frankly, which,
Yes.
depending on the union crew, it may not be the most gently treated mic,
Well, well, we have a special name for this mic out on the road, and it's called the mic of the covenant because it lives in a special case, and and this is all superfluous. It doesn't need to live in a case. Please don't think that
Mhm.
it's robust, and I mean I could throw it in a drawer if I had to, but like it's every time the thing opens, somebody sings the Halo theme song as it comes out, and it's a whole thing. But the interesting thing about it is like because I'm always trying to find new things. I'm always trying to search for the thing.
Mhm.
And, we're never going to find the thing, right? None of us are. It's just
Yeah.
about the journey of finding the thing that you come across cool stuff along the way, I guess. And, we were doing, the spaced pairs, the underheads, the close mic, the far mic, whatever. And it was just like, this is all fine. But like out front, it seems very like when he's hitting this symbol, it's way over there. And when he's hitting that symbol, it's way over there.
Mhm.
And then you start to pan these two sources in a little bit, and then you get some phase relationship problems, and it was dumb.
Mhm.
So I started using a VP88, that Shure mic, and
Yeah.
it's fine. It's a great mic. It's a great utility mic. It's been around forever. It's not a musical mic by any means, but
Mhm.
it certainly was like it was kind of an eye opener for me as like, oh, maybe a stereo mic would be cool, right?
Mhm.
And so, we started looking around, and not a lot of people are doing the
No.
swivel head in one body on a robust mount that's built well, that the cable isn't garbage. It just checked all the boxes. The price point was great. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, yeah, I need to reach out to these people because I had a sales rep at Vintage King years ago, and I was looking for a vocal mic or something. I forget what I was looking for. And the guy was like, "Hey man, no shit. You need to check out these Vanguard mics." He goes, "I know they're at a price point that it might seem like it's a lower than it should be, but," he goes, "these are where it's at. They're great. They're great people. They're great product. Like, you should check this out." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And so when I saw you guys were doing this, I was like, "Yeah, I need to check that out." And honestly, what it does for me and what it does for the band in the ears, which it's really equally as important for both of us, is it just gives me a kit image, right? I'm not taking little pictures of little pieces of the kit and
Mhm.
then trying to make it into a kit image
Mhm.
myself, which is very useful sometimes. Like when you got a big video wall and they don't want a mic hanging over, like sometimes I got to make sacrifices. It is what it is. But at the same time, it gives me a natural centered kit image that works really well, not only as an overhead mic, but it works really well as just a generic drums mic, right? Like,
Mm.
so in the studio, like, I would have no problem taking this mic and a kick mic and being good, right?
Mhm.
Like, and that's the cool part. It doesn't always work in live sound that way because sometimes you can't get the overhead loud enough, or depending on the player or the placement or whatever. But this mic has been really great for us because it's been just a more organic image than what
Mhm.
we've had, right? And the pattern control has been really great. The phase relationship has been great since it's a near coincident. The cool thing that we've been doing recently is I've been doing it in mid side, which is really
Oh,
interesting. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, which has been cool
Interesting. Tell me
because
about that.
the Digico thing has a decoder just built right in, and so we kind of played with it back and forth, and I liked the mid side quite a bit. And this goes back to just kind of the Digico thing too, because there's basically just like a blend of like width versus mono, so you can just like
Mhm.
kind of scallop it for what two sources you want. But I thought that was great because that gave me a really big snare image in addition to the stereo image of that too. Where that got a little weird for us, and this is an us problem, is we had a hazer that was right behind the drum kit, and when that thing would kick on, it was close enough but far away enough to where the stereo image just sounded really bizarrely phasey sometimes, but it would be like this fake like car running in the distance sort of like Foley effect, and I was just like, what the hell is, and it was this MDG thing that was sitting on the ground. And so finally we were just like, let's just go back to XY, and that sorted it out. But yeah, I mean, it's so versatile and it does everything. And typically what I like to do is I found a really good stand that worked for it where I could come over the drum kit. And so I kind of go over the drummer's head and I draw a line between where the kick drum is and where the snare drum is. And that's
Mhm.
my like center line, right? So the idea would be to get kick and snare in the center of the image,
Mhm.
and then everything else is whatever, right?
Yeah.
And the mid side thing was cool for that. It made less of a difference clearly, but like it was the XY was more natural to me and made a
Mhm.
lot more sense. The Blumline thing is rarely applicable for me just because like I just don't want the room,
Yeah, it's
in
live
that at
sound.
all.
Yeah.
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 And but I mean, we've been really happy with it. The players have been really happy with it. And truthfully, it's just like an all-in-one drum situation, which has been really good.
Mhm.
And we've played with a couple of different placements of that. We've done like kind of behind and up and over, which has been good. But I kind of like to get it like right in there. And so it's like you're inside a stereo kit. You know what I mean?
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool, man. I mean,
Yeah.
it was shocking to me, like, the amount of people touring with that mic now, like, seeing it at the
Yes.
Grammys with
Yep.
Olivia Rodrigo and
Yeah.
Miley Cyrus, and seeing it, I went and saw Norah Jones, in
Yeah.
Philly at the Met, and it's over Brian Blade, which was super fun
Yeah.
to hear,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's
21
funny because
Pilots has one on their tour now, so it's
yeah.
like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
like everywhere.
Brian with Olivia, he was like, "How is that?" Because we did Jonas Brothers with them, and I had this thing out, and he was just like, "Is that thing cool? Is that cool? Is that thing cool?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man, it's pretty cool." And then he got one, and then they took it to SNL, and SNL bought two, and then like and then
Yeah,
Paul
Paul
got
David
into it.
Hager, and
Yeah,
yeah, it
yeah.
just
I
you
ran
were
into him
kind
the
of
other day.
the I think you were the pioneer a little bit.
Well, I mean, maybe not, but I just think cool tools that do good work are going to be successful, period. Right. And
Mhm.
this is quality example of that. Like, got out there in the world, everybody's like, oh, this is really, really great, and everybody has a use for something like this. It's perfect. You know, like if I could have 6 of these things, I would, truthfully, because I would put them for audience mics. I'd put them at front
Oh,
of
we
house.
could do
I'd
it.
put
Just let us know.
I just want 6 C24s or the new V24.
The V24, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
well, cut me a check that's a second mortgage then.
no problem. Yeah, I'll talk to Kelsey about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean it's been great, and truthfully, like it's held up really, really well. It's held up a lot better than I had ever hoped it would, to be honest. In you know, every single time we have a precarious situation where, like, because we've got quick clips on it and it's on the stand, and we're using the triad orbit clip, you know, because the LO2s are a little fishy at the times. But you know, anytime that we have our A2 Marissa, anytime she hangs it up, I'm just like, you know, she's like, stop doing that, you know. But it's been really great, and truthfully, it's a big conversation piece. Like, a lot of hands come over, and a lot of locals or other bands will come over and be like, hey, what's the deal with that? And you know, you talk to them about it for 5 minutes, and they're like, oh, that's really cool. And then you tell them how much it costs, and they're like, oh, okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna go buy one.
Yeah,
you know?
because that's, you know, I mean, it costs less than I'm pretty sure it costs less than like a 414 does now.
It
You know?
absolutely does.
So
Yeah,
like, you
100%.
know, and that's just one mic.
Yeah,
The reason a lot of people don't make them is because it's 4 times the work for twice the mic for people like me.
totally.
I was talking with Ben at Bee's Knees, who's a
Mhm.
good friend and who makes the capsules for our V14 or V24. Um, and he said, yeah, we used to do a stereo mic, but it was such a pain in the ass. We stopped. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, trust me, I get it.
Yes.
And I've
Yeah.
worked on, you know, I had a C24 in here that I was repairing just a couple weeks ago, and I'm shipping out just behind me in a box is 2 Neumann SM2s.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
stereo mics. Every rotation mechanism I've ever seen on any condenser stereo mic sucks.
Yes.
When we started, we're like, okay, we have to start with something that like, and our whole thing was like, we need to make it like tour worthy, even though we didn't
Yes.
expect it to go on tour.
Yeah.
Right?
And it worked. It did a great job.
It ended up falling about 10 feet on an Andy Grammer tour because it was the
Yeah.
front of house mic.
Oh,
And
nice. Yeah.
somebody in the audience bumped the stand and came down, and he called me and he's like, hey, Derek, my V44 fell. And I'm like, okay, tell me where you're going next. I'll one day one to you. I'm panicking, yada, yada. He goes, no, it works fine. I just want to let you know it fell. We tested it.
I love that.
I'm like, thanks for the heart attack, dude.
Yeah.
That was
We did
yeah.
my buddy who does all the video game stuff, we had a location record that he wanted to do, and he was like, would you mind come helping me with that stuff? Absolutely, I'd love to do that. So I brought this thing, and you know, we had DPAs all over the place, and we had a couple Sheps and whatever, and I just put this thing out, you know, on a tall stand out in the, you know, 15 feet away or whatever. And I was like, let's just listen to it, whatever. And we pulled up the tracks at the end of the day, and he pulled up everything else. He's like, yeah, this is cool. This is cool. And then he pulled that thing up and he just went, man, he's like,
You're going to make me spend some money.
yeah, I think I need to get one of these. I'm like, yeah. But no, I mean, we can't thank you enough. They've been great. And we've been super happy with it. And it's one of those things that it was just the right tool for the right job.
Oh, I appreciate it, man. You waxed
Yeah.
very eloquent about it, which is, you know, maybe you should be running the NAMM booth this year.
I would not be good at that, I promise.
Well, you've got to be better than me. I'm an engineer, so I'm talking
I
about
get it.
resistors and capacitors and Gloiven, you know, and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I really appreciate the kind words about it. I'm definitely gonna have to snip that up for an Instagram reel at some point.
100%. Yeah.
But
100%. Yeah. I mean,
I
we
always
stand
try
by
and
it.
close with this question because we're coming up on about 50 minutes here, and you know, somebody who's looking to get into doing what you do.
Yeah.
A lot of people look at the top of the mountain, or what they think is the top of the mountain, which is running front of house and production manager for a big tour.
Yeah.
And they go, well, it seems so far away. Where do I start? Like, what are the first steps? So what, if somebody is looking to do what you do, what do you tell them is a good starting point?
A good starting point is to want to be there. Enthusiasm is 9/10 of the law, right? If you are really excited to be there, and you want to do a good job, and you want to be teachable, and you want to hit the mark, you're going to go far, period. And that's if you're selling pop-up tents or whatever. Like, if you are stoked to be there, you're going to do great. The other thing I would say is have a really solid background on the nomenclature of all of this, right? So what cables, what is your audio signal flow? look like? What just have the basics and have a critical understanding of signal flow, how it goes, what the applications are, and what you're going to see on a regular basis. And the other thing that I would say is, like, you're going to have to lose the ego pretty quick. You're going to have to
Mm,
do a lot of shows that you don't want to do. You're going to have to deal with a lot of people that you might necessarily want to deal with. You're going to have to spend a lot of times in a hot warehouse prepping shows in the summer. You're going to have to spend a lot of time driving places. But everything is an opportunity to you, period. Everything. Whether you're dropping off a 58 to some studio, or whether you're going to run sound for a brunch where Vince Gill is going to play. Literally every single thing is an opportunity to you, and you should treat it like that. You should
mm,
treat every single thing like this could be the next thing. And that doesn't mean you have to go in there and be kissing ass and whatever. But if you go in there and you're confident and you're quiet and you're skilled and you know what to do, people are going to notice that, period,
mhm.
all the time. And I mean, I wish more people would have told me that, at that age, and I probably still wouldn't have listened, but that's okay, but at this,
Being in our
yeah.
20s, we've got everything figured out, right?
Well, and yeah, I got thrown into it very quickly, and I just sort of had to like play catch up on, uh, being okay with that, I guess.
Got
And
it.
but at the same time, like I mixing was my thing, and I got kind of thrown into the PM thing, and I didn't want to do it, and I don't want to be ordering guitar strings, and very quickly I realized, like, I need to be good at this so other people can have successful days,
Got it.
and that's really what it came down to.
Mhm.
But I mean, I will say it's incredibly fun. It's incredibly hard, incredibly draining. It's incredibly rewarding, but it's also very painstaking and very difficult. So, like,
Mhm.
you just gotta want it, like anything else, I suppose. But
Mhm.
yeah,
Awesome. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap it. Thanks a million for being willing to do
absolutely,
this. Thank you
my
for the
pleasure.
kind words about our mic and for the advice for lots of people and for waxing philosophical with me, which is how these things tend to go because that's, sitting here with a
We're,
philosophy book sitting next to me. So,
we're interesting people, damn it. Yeah,
we don't just push buttons.
that's
And
right.
yes, I
Yeah.
know what all of them do. Stop
Yes,
asking.
every single one.
Yeah. Well, thanks a million. We'll see you guys next week or next
Yeah,
month, I guess. For I don't know. I kind of schedule these on the fly. So as you
I
can
love that.
tell, I'm very, very organized.
Yeah, same.
Thanks, Chris. Oh, and by the way, where can people find you if they want to hire you to run their big tour?
I mean, I knew you were going to ask this, and I'm embarrassed to say I'm so inept at social media on purpose. I spend very little time on that, and everything I post is very sarcastic and not worth anybody's time, including my own. But I'm that Chris Diener on Instagram, and that's literally all I have. And it's
Gotcha.
mainly pictures of hilarious things I find in venues, and my son doing fun things. So it's really just solid gold content, if you ask me. Being honest.
Well, I'll put the Instagram handle on the outro screen here so everybody can go find you. And I'm actually curious about the ridiculous stuff you find in venues, quite frankly.
It's it's
Kids are
never a
kids, but
disappointment.
venues
Yeah.
are venues.
Venues are venues. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.